Thanks for coming, Brad.
I'm glad to be here. Thanks for asking me for an interview.
So I think our idea came from an article that I was working on that was published this morning on the O'Reilly site about nonprofits and how even though we have multi-billion-dollar companies in the open source free software space, nonprofits is still important. So how would you say, what is the role that charities and nonprofits play in free software?
I think people often forget that pretty much everything that's come out of open source and free software began with a charity, namely the Free Software Foundation, which was founded in 1985. Today, we have a number of different charities in the community that are roughly two different types. There are traditional charities like the FSF and the one that I work for, Software Freedom Conservancy. In an IRS speak, these are the 501c3 charities. And then now, these days, there's a number of what are called trade associations that are under the rules 501c6, and they focus on a common business interest. So they're funded by companies to push forward the common business interest of those companies. So there's two different types of charities doing two very different things in our community that are incredibly valuable to the advancement of open source and free software.
So forming a nonprofit, or there are two types, but forming a charity in particular would be a 501c, just like you might do for, say, an environmental organization.
Yes, and I think the comparison is very apt. There are many advocacy organizations that are fighting for software freedom, including our organization, the Software Freedom Conservancy, and they tend to take on those things that are done for the public good. In fact, they're required to act in the public good as part of their charter.
And what are some of the things, I understand that you sort of take burdens off of the developer who would like to have an organization but doesn't want to go through the scud work of setting up an organization.
Indeed, that's in fact one of the key founding factors about the organization I now work for, the Software Freedom Conservancy. We're what's called in the nonprofit world a fiscal sponsor. And what a fiscal sponsor does is they provide the infrastructure of being a nonprofit charity. They handle the paperwork and the filing and lots of different types of work that need to be done to keep a charity going. And in a free software culture, that allows developers to focus on what they do best, developing and creating better open source and free software, while we handle the other type of back office things that are absolutely essential for free software projects to exist, but often developers are not the best at doing those because they're much better at developing the actual software.
And amazingly, you find people like you and Karen Sander who enjoy doing those things that developers hate.
I mean, it's tough to say that I necessarily enjoy it every day, but I think it's absolutely necessary. So I'm willing to put the work in so that I can enable other people to do the really exciting work of developing free software because they have the infrastructure behind them to handle all of these issues. From things as simple as getting developers reimbursed for their travel to helping them raise money to fund developers, to fund more development work. We do a tremendous amount of that at the Software Freedom Conservancy. And then other types of more complex services like helping them with their licensing issues and copyright issues and even enforcing their licenses when they're violated.
And can you mention any other organizations doing work like this that you respect and like to talk about?
Oh, there are a number of choices. In fact, when a project is looking for a charitable home, we encourage them to investigate all the other options that are available and find the right home for them. Each of these organizations has kind of its own tweak and its way of doing things. The Apache Software Foundation does some of this work. If you want a very basic organization, Software in the Public Interest, which is the organization that Debian Project is affiliated with, is a very bare bones version of what we do. And we always encourage projects to look at all these options so that they find the nonprofit home that's right for them. And since there's a couple of different choices already, they really don't have to go through the work of starting their own. They have a whole menu of choices to pick which one's best for their project.
Thanks for coming in today.
Thanks for having me. It's been great.